Hi, I'm Joe Gagnon, CEO of 1upHealth. I'm panicked about a 100-mile race that I'm going to be doing in June.
Hello, Knut.
Hey, Howard.
Hey, buddy. We're studio guests.
I know. It's awesome.
No
Love
banter.
That.
No banter.
No banter today.
But you can say something.
Yeah. Hello.
That's it.
I can say a lot of stuff. I will during the one.
Joe Gagnon's here. He's CEO of 1upHealth. Hey, Joe.
Hello, Howard.
So we're not going to talk around him. We're going to just do some banter with him before we even say anything about Joe. So Joe is visiting this week. I'd like to do this I think Phoenix could become big enough where we could just make it a local show, stick, a cat or a dog in here, an animal of a farm animal, and some noises, and Riley or Ethan, and we could really have a daily fun show.
But you're an animal in itself.
I'm just wondering if we should
Going to get competition.
do we have a big enough budget to fly in guests? Because Joe's a good guest. Like, how do we get good guests like Joe? There's probably enough smart people in Phoenix that we could do one a week with a Phoenix person.
We'll talk about that later. We might be able to do something like that.
No, we need to solve. Then I'll forget. So Knut,
Yes.
open up. Do we have a note-taking system that we can do?
Yeah, I have it recorded.
Oh, good point.
There you go.
This is why we're still friends 30 years later.
Mm-hmm.
We went to school together. So you are how old?
Who, me?
Yeah.
Oh, my God. 62.
You're 62?
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about longevity because you've got it all figured out. You weigh 62 pounds.
Just a few more, but yeah.
Well, how much do you weigh?
148.
140. Fuck, he's a machine. You only run. Do you bike?
I do, yes. That was really where I got to start, was as a cyclist, then Ironman, then marathon.
We have so much in common.
Love cycling.
Canada, cycling.
Mm-hmm.
I have 40 pounds on him. No, I still think you could take me in a fight. So that's where it becomes weird. You're 62, I'm 58. You could take me in a fight even though I have 40 pounds. You take Knut in a fight just by breathing on him. He's so top heavy.
This year, Howard, my big goal for this year, I started the year saying I was going to do 100,000 push-ups this year. So
divide that by 300. What are we at? That's 3,000 a day.
300 a day.
Oh, 300 a day.
Yeah.
I can do 10 a week if I do 1.5 a day. Knut, when's the last time you did a push-up?
I can't even remember.
You know what I'm doing? I'm doing it with, I have a trainer, and it's been great. And because I can't push myself.
Yeah.
I can do push-ups myself. I can do stretch myself. I can't do strength myself.
Mm.
I just never learned the mechanics of it. And so my form is always wrong, so I don't trust even myself. The push-up, the sit-up, squats, pretty much. Is there anything else you need to do? The prison workout, pull-ups.
Pull-ups are good.
Yeah, I'm not good even for one pull-up.
Yeah, that was one of my big challenges, was this idea of trying to do 100 pull-ups in less than 10 minutes. It took a long time to get to that.
100 pull-ups in 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
I have a good friend, Paul Grimberger, kind of does the same. He's like, he's a muscle. But that's more about strength, and you don't look like top-heavy. You're just very evenly distributed.
No, but you want to be resilient if you're going to, this whole idea of longevity, which you brought up, is about
fascinating to me.
Vitality over time and being able to continue to be, capable of doing whatever you want as you age. It's funny when you ask the age, I always sort of think like, I don't know if that's a relevant question anymore because I just perform at the level I am at today. And it's a fun, there's this guy, Peter Attia, I'm sure many of your listeners.
I know, everybody tells me to follow him. And
he just talks to the longevity doctor, and he's trying to get us all to, at 80 years old, be able to still be resilient.
Right.
And I think that's key.
I grew up with this thing about goals, and now it's all about habit.
Mm-hmm.
Too many people have goals, and I'm like, you got to have habit.
Right.
Mine is right. Little habits every day.
Yeah.
Knut wakes up, has some whale juice and some tequila, right? You have to. Are you still doing the whale stuff?
We don't do tequila that much. We do aquavit.
But you do the whale stuff, the blubber.
Yeah, I do.
Remember?
Yeah.
And I have a few good habits. I think eating is still the habit I got to crux, and Ambien. People tell me it's terrible, but one has to sleep. But, those are the two last bastions for me eating. And I've got my weight down 20-ish pounds over the years from working out. But now it's about diet.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, that's our opening. Because there's so much other stuff we got to talk about. Because healthcare is today's show. You guys, we invested in 1UP Healthcare during the COVID crisis. A fellow by the name of Ricky and his partner started it. And they're based out of Boston.
Yep.
I forget how, life was on Zoom. And Gary was probably doing one of the incubator calls or Zoom. Saw 1UP Healthcare. He was immediately excited about it. And we invested. We kind of led the seed round. It was a pretty competitive seed round, actually, at that time. And can you tell people what 1UP Healthcare was? Has it changed a little bit? Where 1UP Healthcare is today and what it does? And it's just an incredible company.
Yeah, thanks, Howard. And it's fun to be here. Appreciate it. And yeah, the 1UP Health sort of mission is pretty simple. Create an open data platform to allow data to be connected to and computed across the healthcare industry. Today, it's a mostly proprietary industry that, interoperability isn't even a word really that works.
Right. Everything's closed.
Yeah.
Everything's just fragmented.
And not for bad reason, but really, the nature of the distributed payer, provider, patient. We don't have customers. It's a third-party payer system. You have the Medicare stuff. It's complicated. $4 trillion, lots of delivery systems. We know how hard healthcare is. But really, at the end of the day, what we're working towards is what everyone has done in every other industry. Use APIs, use the web, use the internet, use the cloud, use that as an enabler for business operations at a level that would give us a better return on our dollar, which is what we don't get in healthcare today.
So that's the mission. What does the product do? Like, where are you at today?
Yeah, the product is essentially on the we'll talk about the easy in, the data inside. We take existing legacy data and we convert it using an ETL tool, extract, transform, and load into the cloud, into an Amazon environment. And then we provide API access to that data. So a set of APIs for an individual patient or a bulk request of that. And then we run, pretty standard tools like SQL to do analytics against it. The interesting part is that, you would think at the simplicity level of what we do, this problem would have been solved. But like those assumptions get us all in trouble, and it's why we are where we are.
And so I think of it like, I tell people it's like Plaid, even though people don't know what Plaid is, for healthcare at some level.
Yep.
It feels also a little bit like Snowflake, which is a name, with the data pools, connecting everything. Is there any kind of, is it like a Snowflake for healthcare possible? Is that too much of a stretch?
No, I think that over time, Snowflake, look, they're a great company. But what's just a fun way to think about it, Howard? We sort of we're working on a puddle that's going to become a lake that moves to the cloud.
Right.
And so we think that Snowflake is sort of in that lake category, which is bringing together a bunch of disparate data with their interface. What we want to do is use this FHIR data standard, which is a JSON representation.
That's what you created.
Yeah.
What's the company?
The healthcare industry created.
Sorry. Yeah.
And we make that available to any of the stakeholders. And so that's the difference, which is that the ecosystem, almost think like how Salesforce did it with creating a CRM system with a set of tools in an ecosystem of capability that extends that data's value outside of just the boundaries of the organization out into the industry. And that's really what we're setting up to do. So there are elements of Snowflake, there's elements of Plaid, there's elements of Salesforce. It's integrated, easy to use, easy in, easy out system.
And what was Ricky? Ricky's a young guy.
Yeah.
So how did he come up with this?
Yeah, so Ricky had been, looking at the sort of the data problem from his history at Google and then at Care Journey. And he saw this FHIR standard emerging and realized that
that's what I remember. He was like, Howard, the FHIR standard.
That's it. A set of APIs, though, right? The key is that the data standard's nice, but then you need an access point to it that's, with no effort is the way that the industry would talk about it, so that I could just put it in an app, let an app developer use it. And then ultimately what our pivot was when I joined 3 years ago was to pivot to the enterprise class application level, not just an API for app developers.
And so that's because he's young, that's what he was thinking about?
I think that Well, probably, my
First of all, it's amazing because it was during COVID. Like the companies start this thing during COVID.
Really easy. You can code a lot on your laptop and you can deploy it so much easier and differently than we used to be able to. But still, if you think about healthcare or any enterprise software opportunity, there's still a lot of process. There's contracting, there's all of the legacy of the IT environment. So what we needed to do was to transition just out of this internet kind of world and into an enterprise world, which is why we've had the growth that we've had over the past 3 years.
I have found my happy medium. I now tell people I'm 65. See? And the reaction is, what would be your reaction? If I tell you I'm 65, would you not say I look fantastic?
Yeah.
So I am very comfortable, shameless in a way. I found the number that makes people appreciate me, which is 65. And so I forget where this is going. But what I was going to say is we were talking about this earlier, where, false prophets and this last 15 years of misdirection, let's call it, where everybody's got bad habits and everybody was patting each other on the back about, cloud and APIs and social networks and starting to believe their own bullshit. And then the real world's now stepped in with, you got to have a business.
Right.
Even 1upHealth, as you said.
Yeah.
And I look at our work over time. Fund 1 was very Web 2. Fund 2 was very Web 2. And now I look at our work in Fund 3, and Gary's led the way in a lot of this, where I was getting bearish on my own ideas because it just felt crowded. And we have some huge companies that are in weird industries. Healthcare. We're not healthcare guys. Gary's become one. Law with Marble Law, Itai Hirsch here in town. Multi-billion-dollar company already, and Manscaped. So we're a VC firm that started out in social, and now our big companies are healthcare, law, and they're not AI.
And grooming, yeah.
Yeah, and Manscaped, ball shaving, the lowest tech business, and we're all within one fund. So people have to evolve, and healthcare. What finally, I think while everybody's throwing stones, this back end was being created somehow, somewhere. So it's kind of a miracle in a way.
We're at $4 trillion to spend on the way to potentially $6 trillion.
Over 10 years?
Yeah. The burden on the economy in the United States is going to be suffocating.
It already is.
It is. And we know this, right? We don't get the care we need. The experience is horrible. I mean, as measured by any objective measure, we're the worst in outcomes in developed nations, and it's the lowest customer satisfaction of any industry ever.
Correct.
And so, but we have beautiful doctors and nurses who, if you get into a care situation,
are fine.
Right. Process doesn't work. Infrastructure doesn't work. The crazy part about this is that the technology is just sitting there waiting for us to use it. And that's really what we're assembling. We probably wouldn't be able to even do this company 20 years ago because we wouldn't have an open architecture.
That's what I'm saying. The
cloud.
FRC thing is amazing.
And so what I think is going to happen is it's going to still take time. AI aside, all the big ideas we have to move an entire system. Look how long it's going to take to move from a battery-powered car to a battery-powered industry. It's going to take 30 years to make that happen just because the nature of the infrastructure shift.
Yeah.
And so we try and accelerate that by using these open standards. No one has to put any effort into it. But it was, a sort of lying on the ground opportunity. But still, you have to have, I like to think about the endurance that I bring from my personal life into the endurance of building a business.
Yeah.
And you need both of those to sort of outlast the people who are trying to stop this from happening.
So who's trying to stop this from happening?
I think that there's a lot of embedded self-interest, even my customers. Right?
It's like banking.
Yeah, the same thing, like the payer market, right? These guys are now on Happy Street. There's $375 billion of Medicare Advantage flowing into these businesses, United Healthcare, Cigna. Like these guys, this is like
they're getting
crap.
paid twice too, I think.
It's crazy. Yeah. And so, they want care to be better, but they would make sure that they still get a lot of money out of this. The federal government feels like it's spending too much money to support the Medicare system. And then there's these big tech companies who build proprietary data models, which have no interest in opening up the data because they all know the value of it.
So who's your biggest enemy? Who do you wake up and go, rats? For me, it's like my Newman in Seinfeld speak is like Goldman, JP Morgan. Who in the healthcare industry are the Newmans?
We wouldn't want to pick on a specific company because I think it's unfair, but we would know some of them who would say they're solving the problem differently. So the big EHR system vendors on the back end of that data are not trying to figure out how to make that data more beneficial to the industry rather than just their customers. I think that's one side where the enemy. I think the second really is that we're trying to figure out, this is one thing which is a really interesting dynamic about this industry versus every other one. There is no customer in this system. So we have to create a new pressure system. So customers have transformed every other industry because they say, I don't want to spend that much for this service or this product. But here, because the third-party payer system owns that relationship, the customer, us, the patient, the member, does not have the leverage. So we need to create the leverage somewhere to make that happen. Partially happening from the federal government. For the first time, we have some bipartisan cooperation around saying like, whoa, we got to use information to get us a better read on how this system should work. Think about this, Howard. There are people making decisions on 90-day-old data that we would never be able to do in any other industry. Imagine
by the way, the Fed's doing that.
Yeah, right.
The Fed's actually doing that with the economy.
Fair enough. So I think that the enemy here is the existing process that gets defended because it supports a lot of people and lines their pockets.
Yeah. So you got to just really, you have a lot of Newmans. So in a world that you exist, who's your customer? So tell people who's like 1UP's customer. Because in the end, you got to survive.
Yeah. And I think that, very practical. It's like the payers for us right now. They have the money. That's really why they're the customer.
Yeah. And that's why you switched the business to enterprise.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so their scale allows them to, they still believe they can get some competitive advantage by getting more data and using that in the way they execute their business. And so they want this infrastructure. It makes their lives easier, do better analytics. Really, at the end of the day, what is the destination of this? There's two really key use cases. One would be change the patient experience, and number two would be to allow for better analytics. Better analytics would improve quality, reduce risk, improve care, and reduce cost. And that would be the benefit of better analytics because this is a very complicated business, but it can be solved.
But a customer would be who? You say payers,
yeah,
like for
Cigna,
my one listener, who's a payer?
Yeah, Cigna.
Okay.
Yeah, so in healthcare,
Are there hundreds of payers or tens of payers?
No, there's thousands of payers.
Okay.
The large ones, there's about 350.
Okay. And Cigna's one, United Healthcare.
Aetna, United Healthcare, Humana, Centene. These are the largest of the payers. These are multi-billion-dollar companies. Like the scale of Cigna is a $165 billion company.
Wow. Yeah, it's like United Healthcare. People don't know. It's like one of the best performing companies of all time.
One of the top 5 companies in the Fortune 500.
And no one ever talks about it.
Nope.
They must love that. No one ever talks about it. Because there is, you can't say this, but they got to be evil. Ooh. You can't make that much money without being evil. You don't have to comment.
They're pretty rough.
They're pretty rough. That was very Canadian. They're pretty rough. They're like the De Maurier of cigarettes. So hang on. So you're building the sales team, or is this really on you? Because you're 300-ish people now?
No. We're on our way there. We're about 160 people today. When I joined, we were 15. So we're going to
air this in 2 weeks, so you'll be at 300 people.
There you go. Exactly. Well, we're trying to, Howard, one of the things we're trying to do for you, our investors and everyone else, is do this growth at a reasoned pace, right? Yeah. That this isn't a company we want to start with a whole bunch of people and then have to eliminate some of them. So think about, where should we be in 10 years rather than where should we be today is part of what we do. So the scale of our team is pretty big for what we're trying to do. The other thing, we serve the payer market, but the other market that's really intriguing is the digital health market. So these thousands of companies who are out there building these point solutions that are going to help our health, but they need data, right? And they use our API to actually get access to that data so that their app works better.
So they're separate from the payers?
Yes.
So you have two things going on. You have the payers actually helping you grow,
and
then you have this other end of the model, the app side.
Yes.
So you've kept both going.
Yeah, because we really want to be, the Switzerland for this entire industry. No one at any point should say, well, we don't really need 1UP. You should actually say we need someone playing that role. Sort of it's the grease in the industry that will create both the freedom of movement of information and a network effect to share that information.
And you live where full-time?
In Denver.
But mostly on the road.
Yes.
And
our office in Boston.
Yeah. Is Boston the biggest office?
Yes. Yeah.
And you don't mind the travel?
I've been traveling, in my career, 5 million miles of flying, like 6,000 nights in hotels over the past 25 years. I'm a gypsy. I love being where the action is, the customer, the business, the market. I think actually General Petraeus said this idea of situational awareness. You can't commute to the war. You have to actually be there to really understand what's happening. And I just, that's what I know, like what I see.
Do we like, I don't know history. Do we like Petraeus? Does America like Petraeus?
I think he did a good job as the Supreme Allied Commander.
Well, that's a great line.
Yeah.
What is that again? You can't
commute. You can't commute to the war.
Oh, dude. Can we write that down?
Yeah.
Or is that on audio?
I recorded that too.
You can't commute to the war.
So he was working in Tampa, right? That's where
beautiful.
Central Command is in the United States. And he, as the general, could have stayed there. Instead, he got on an airplane and he went to Afghanistan and wore the khakis and he worked there, right? That's a different way of doing the job.
Fantastic. Yeah. So yes, so 20 years on the road. I'm kind of like you. I think a little less for different reasons, more just to network and put myself in this position where we can do this at a lean. I'm not an operator. Gary was, but to be as lean as possible, I got to put on the miles because we're a network company. Can we talk? You just raised 30-ish million?
The C round was 40 million.
40 million. Yeah, we participated. We rarely participate this late. The first round when Ricky and team started was like 3 or 4 people we invested.
That's right.
So it's still pretty fast growth in 3 years.
Yeah. We've grown.
Company's only 3 years old.
10x. Yeah.
Very impressive.
It's very impressive. Maybe the timing was right. Maybe he just had the right background and interest. I forget if Ricky was passionate about healthcare or he just saw the opportunity.
I think he learned to be passionate about healthcare. It's hard not to want to be in this industry when you start to see, the way it works. Like, it's sort of like, man, if you like solving problems, where else would you go solve for? Like, there aren't that many other areas. Like, we can only, do retail so much better, you know.
Well, that's why I stopped fintech.
Right.
Everything. I'm not going to do another Robinhood or eToro. If you're not, people aren't happy with that. There's enough places to blow yourself up. Fat Jewish had this great line, and he was like, 20 years ago, if you really were nervous and didn't want anything bad to happen to you, you sat on your couch, and nothing bad could happen to you. And he said, flash forward 20 years, and he goes, sitting on your couch, you can cause a lot of damage. You can really blow some stuff up sitting on a couch.
Oh, amen.
So, we've got enough degeneracy. And so I kind of dropped out of, started the podcast, COVID happened. I think it was the tail end of dipsy doodleitis for the world. Everybody was FOMOing and thinking they were smart. And it was freaking me out. Not because I'm smart, just because it was freaking me out. I'd just seen this story before. I never know how it ends. I'm not smart enough to go short, but I just stopped going long for the most part. And now we're in this phase where, like you said, the good entrepreneurs are got to move to healthcare education, where the GDP is.
Yeah.
That's where the fat is. And it's going to be a war. And you can't commute to this war. We got to be in it. So what's the recruiting situation like in 2023?
Yeah, really different, Howard. One of the things that's cool is a lot of the people who have been, sort of pushed out of other organizations are available. The easiest thing for us is the vision resonates with everyone. Like, how could you not want to provide better healthcare for all? I mean, that's our purpose, right? And so that's great. So we're picking up some of the really, really good people who have worked on big data problems. We have a new CTO. He was the founder of Calibra, worked on a data governance problem over years. We have people from Twitter and Pinterest and Yahoo who worked on massive data input problems. And so that's really exciting for us because we're going to sort of bring this idea. This Puddle Lake cloud thing really gets you to this world of one day about the data mesh, which is it sort of doesn't matter where it starts or where it ends. The tech should resolve for that. And that's what our vision ultimately is. That's why sometimes, someone might ask a question about one of these competitive alternatives. And really what we say is, it's not going to matter because this will be the plug and play environment. Like, get in a rental car and whatever phone you bring, you can connect. because we've figured out the interface, right? You don't have to be smart anymore. And that's what we're going to do. Now, if we're 20 years from now, Howard, and you and I are doing whatever we're doing, I think what'll be interesting is that we won't be in this paper world anymore. The transition will be over. We'll have started from digital, but we'll have the footprint available for all that data to find a place to be used.
So what's the biggest problem today? Just patience? Or
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. This is, I don't know. The resistance isn't because people don't know what the benefits are. The resistance is because they actually don't have a reason to move.
Yeah.
Like, it's sort of like, it's okay, even though we don't like it. It's sort of, well, yeah, maybe we'll get there. It's going to require some leadership. It's going to require companies like us who are just going to keep beating the drum, about how to make this move. Amazon, for example, we're going to one day be a pretty big customer of the cloud. And, the more interest we get from the parties that play with us, the higher the probability of success.
So the cloud is still early stages in general?
Oh my God. The data that we believe is true is that 5% of healthcare data is in the cloud. 30% of the world's data is healthcare. 5% is in the cloud.
Wow.
80% is unstructured.
So it's just messed up.
Totally.
Wow. Compared to another industry that's cloud forward. What's a cloud forward industry?
Well, financial services.
Financial services.
Yeah.
But that's recent too in a lot of ways, 5 years.
Oh, for sure. I don't think that we're that far behind. It's just the scale of what we're dealing with is so big that it's going to take time. We have today billions of these fire resources. We'll have trillions and into petabytes of fire resources at some point in time. This will be one of the largest data systems ever built.
You're in great shape. You're ready to go. Company's well-financed. Recruiting world's going to be better, especially healthcare. People that are bored want to say, they were working on tweets. Now they're working on pins. They're working on photos. Now they want to work on something that at least is, I wouldn't say fun, but is at least satisfying. So in this industry, what happens in terms of acquisitions? They're just such giants. So do the payers move in? Where's everybody moving in terms of acquisitions?
What's interesting is that there's this idea maybe of vertical integration. So you had United Healthcare buys Optum, and, then they buy Change Healthcare. And so you have Cigna that has Evernorth as a services business. So there could be a model that says that they start to acquire the tech that builds the stack out for the industry. And so they serve their interests into their parent and to the market. The other option is that the cloud providers, the Amazon, the Google, the Microsofts, who would be housing this data, and they would be, sort of the facilitator of getting that data out to the industry. I don't see the sort of the tech roll-up really having the scale necessarily. But, sometimes I think we're more IT than healthcare because of the infrastructure, but you have to understand healthcare to make this business work. So I do think there'll be a reconciliation of a lot of these proprietary tech solutions as we open up the data model broadly, not just 1UP. This is also about just because this fire data standard is going to continue to do that. And so it's going to be very interesting over the next 3 to 5 years. There'll be a lot of noise around AI, but I think it's still noise. I don't think the system will understand how to use that today.
First, you got to get it to the cloud, and get it structured. You
got HIPAA, you got data privacy. You have to think about how this data should move, can move, who's going to allow for it, to whose benefit.
Yeah.
So that'll get in the way for a little while.
Still feels consumer-y AI.
Yes. Yeah.
Which is why it's so popular.
It's cool. That's fine.
It's cool.
That's good.
So reason I was getting into this acquisitions today, if Google, Facebook, or Amazon try and buy something, FTC is going to step in. Mm-hmm. Is there any thoughts of how powerful United Healthcare, Cigna are, where, so for example, we had a company called Customer, which Facebook acquired. We were seed investors. Facebook acquired for $1.1 billion. It's $1 billion. It's a real number, but it got held up for 18 months. Facebook's a $400 billion company when they bought us. Mm-hmm. So they're spending cash, 2% on a deal, and the FTC stepped in. And so in healthcare, there must be so much cronyism And like, when does that come to healthcare? Or is no one watching? Because these are huge companies.
Yeah. I think that, there is this sort of existential thing that people talk about, which is, could we drown ourselves in the cost of this healthcare delivery system because we've sort of let it run amok?
Yeah.
That's in the discussion across the industry. And so I don't think that, deregulating airlines was hard when it happened. It took a while, but it happened. You wouldn't have had a $29 Frontier flight 30 years ago. And so some of the things that we see today that might seem impossible, to basically improve the delivery of care to anyone through an app, it should be easy to do, will happen. I think this is, like one of the things I was thinking about on the podcast about what would I be panicked about other than, this 100-mile race coming up is really the idea that people grow impatient with the rate of change in the industry. It's just going to take time.
It's going to take time.
And so we all need to sort of just be willing to go for a while at this.
Yeah. Well, it's the same thing in my industry. We invest, we tell our LPs it's going to take 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people got light. There was the Instagram, and that was a year. And then there was, all these things that happened so fast, explosions of growth and valuation. And I just don't think we'll see that again. So people are going to have to get used to it's like wine. It takes time to build a great company, and good VCs just have to explain that to their LPs. And we got to go back to the discipline of like, how do I price this if it's going to truly take 10 to 12 years to build a great business? And that's what we've lost, that discipline. Where I meant to go with healthcare and service, or maybe I'm not explaining myself right, is, that scene in Raiders of the Lost Ark, the very last scene, they spent 2.5 hours fighting Nazis to get, Harrison Ford finally gets the Ark, and then he gives it to the U.S. government. And the last scene in that movie, which is an epic scene, is just a picture of that box being wheeled into
storage
an
facility.
endless storage facility, right? Like never to be to the bowels that it came from in a different bowel. And that's what I'm wondering.
Yeah.
Are these companies smart enough to say, here's $1 billion in 1UpHealth Care, and then stick it in a box, slow everything down? Because in a way, not to knock Salesforce, isn't that what they've been doing?
Yeah.
By acquiring, again, I win either way as an investor, right? But you always wonder, and that's what I'm worried about right now, is like, I went to the hospital once, and it's the saddest place on earth. And it is where I feel you go to die, not to live. And of course, that's not everybody's case. So, again, that's just my cynical take as someone who had a bad experience over something small. So that's my cynical take.
Yeah, I think that that is a scenario for sure. There's no question that scenario can play out. And I think it in some ironic way has played out with some of the other proprietary solutions in the way they've gone about this. I think we'll put it out there that our intention is not to fall prey to, the Borg, so to speak. Our intention is to show a path that's of benefit to everyone, including the large organizations who would benefit ultimately. Let's play this out a little bit over time, which is better tools should be usable by all parties.
Correct.
To make their businesses better. You don't have to just put it in a box and lock it in the closet to be dominant as a brand. We know this. Go over history, from whether it was Standard Oil through to General Motors. If you start as a powerhouse with a lot of share and you don't pay attention to markets, you will go away over time.
Yeah.
And if we become an enabler for, those who are more progressive, I don't care how big you are, you don't have a guarantee. And we want to play so that they could benefit or anyone else as an emergent disruptor can benefit.
Okay, that's great. So one last question, and we'll move to longevity because you are the right guy to talk to, and it's a fascination of mine, health. One of the other cool things about 1UP is that, Ricky's spinning off something else. Is that something we can talk about?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so how does that happen? Like the company is now spawning its own companies.
Right. Yeah, I think that, you guys have worked on this for a long time, which is, a founder and their skills that they bring to an organization, and when do they evolve with it, or when are they better doing what they were really good at and starting it in the first place? And Ricky and I developed an amazing relationship over 3 years, and I'm the operator and he's the idea guy, and we would have, sort of constrained him to just have him continue to work on engineering problems that others can do. So we started this idea of 1UP Labs, and he ran labs for a while, and he played around with these generative AI models, and he found a lot of really good signal through the noise. And then as a team, we realized that it would be way better for him and for the market if he went out and spun this out. So he created genhealth.ai. He spun it out at the same time we did the financing, and he's out there, building some of the best generative tech predictive models that the industry is going to see. So it's good. I'm doing what I'm good at. He does what he's good at. He still sits on our board. We both help each other. This might be a healthier way for all of us to think about the transition from founder to operator without any conflict, and there's no bad in this.
And I would take it one step further, because I've been thinking about this around finances, full circle, founder, what did you call it? Founder to operator?
Operator, yeah.
Yeah. And then how about investor?
Right.
Where even more stuff is spawned and rolls up to the top.
Exactly.
Instead of just letting the guy go and start a competing product.
Right. Yeah. No, and we have a lot to gain from both of us being, collaborative.
Very cool. So let's switch topics. That's 1UP Healthcare. Congrats on everything. And to my partner, Gary, for being able to identify this stuff on Zoom. Here was my role on Zoom. I don't know. I got to meet you in person. So everybody has their own thing. So now that we're all back in person, I'm having more fun again. I'm outside. I'm fascinated by riding, because maybe the machine Steve Jobs always talked about. It's just the tech has become so beautiful, and the ability to cover ground. Everything about it for me is very much more enjoyable, other than obviously the risk. I just fell off and bike in Israel, and it's scary. I don't seem to be scared when I'm going fast, but accidents do happen. Running, the thing that bothers me about running is just my body, and that's whatever it is. I just can't mentally do it anymore. How do you think about longevity? Is it more diet? Is it more fitness?
I think that the path is one that's multidimensional. I think it's about choices. I think that this is a system that we operate. There's a biology to this system. And the better that we understand it, the better that we can leverage it and use it. Like high level of strain can create, a lot of negative effects. Athletes get injured. Why do they get injured? They're pushing so hard. And so I think there's this really interesting balance between using our system so that we overcome, really, at the end of the day, Howard, right? This all starts with, we're born, and between, call it 0 and 35 years old, mitochondria continue to increase, right? This is what happens so that we would procreate and create our replacements. And after 35, this gene turns off and we start to decline. This is natural. Now, the question that we're all trying to figure out is the slope of that decline and how long does that go? And so if you just leave it, which is through sort of the lack of activity, that system declines faster because it does actually trigger against activity. So this could be, from writing all the way to running. Any activity that uses this system will trigger it to do more. And so the idea is once you turn 35, you need to start to programatize, because really up to 35, the body was taking care of that for you. Why were we so resilient? Why were we so capable? Well, we didn't have to do much. But post 35, they don't know exactly if it's 33 or 38 years old, but there is this gene. Then you have to take over. And so if you want longevity, you then have to create these habits. You have to create your system. What are your daily practices that are going to leverage the use of this body and the way the biology works? So the mitochondria can continue to increase at a declining rate, but a less declining rate if you're out running or biking or doing yoga or walking or playing golf. Any activity does that. The same with, ultimately, I think we're going to prove over time that Alzheimer's and other degenerative brain diseases come from the lack of use of our resource. It goes into sort of decay little by little. Now, yes, there are some other biological interferences that happen that none of us can control today, cancer and other things. But if you're a generally healthy person, you have to put less strain. So yes, losing weight over time is beneficial because it's less strain on your system. Inflammation comes from too much of the bad stuff that we would put in, and you can reconcile that when you're earlier in your life and you can't later. So I gave up alcohol 15 years ago. I became plant-based. It allowed me to perform at increasing levels as I was moving along because I wasn't living in a state of inflammation as I was getting older. Establishing these daily practices and holding yourself accountable. This is sort of interesting. I always wonder, like, why is that hard if this is going to help your life?
It's just a trick. It's just the addiction of, the food's the biggest curse. It's got it for me, it's sugar because I don't drink. And it's, I guess, carbs, you know?
Yeah, but if you're using energy system, carbohydrates are okay. So it's just a matter if you're not using the system, then yes, sugar is bad for you. But, you know, I probably need to eat more than I do. Actually, ironically, the more active I am, the less hungry I am.
Oh, really? For me, maybe it's the wrong activity. Biking makes me hungry. If I lift weights, I'm fine. But if I bike, I'm hungry.
Yeah. What I did 20 plus years ago, Howard, I started writing down what I was doing every day to create an accountability model for myself so I could keep track. I would set micro goals that became macro goals. Then I sort of tried to figure out how far along I could go. And then I became curious about this system and how it worked. And I was getting such a return on that investment in time. Yeah, the first mile, the first push-up, the first anything is hard for any of us. And that's how I was. Yeah. But then I realized the kind of return I got from it, which is higher energy, felt better about myself, had these accomplishments that I wouldn't have had otherwise, activities that I could go do. Look, pickleball is great too. People are out there playing pickleball 4 or 5 hours, you know, but you still need to do other things to build strength. And, you know, I think the longevity is going to come from keeping this system as, you know, refined as it could possibly be, you know, on this journey that we're going on.
So but you don't have to do 100 miles.
No.
So why are you doing it?
Well, I sort of, I don't know, have this curiosity.
You're insane. See, we got to our point.
I just like discomfort because it sort of triggers systems that don't get triggered otherwise. And like, wow, that feeling, what would I do with that feeling? And, you know, I think, Howard, every one of us are in this sort of battle with ourselves in our lives.
Sure.
You know, am I worthy? You know, how good am I? Not trying to prove anything to you or Knut or anyone else. It's just to yourself. And so that's the battle I want to go on. You know, we started, probably many of us not that dissimilar. You know, I was 16 years old being bullied into McDonald's when I was a kid, and I hated that feeling. And I sort of wanted to prove to everyone that that wasn't a reality that I wanted to live in. So I set on a path to prove to myself that I could do something. What I can control is what I should worry about. And I've gotten this great return from it. And so, you know, I could go do a push-up contest now, and I could beat a 29-year-old, and that just seems incomprehensible, except if you put the effort in, you get a return because this system actually wants to work on your behalf.
Now, say we went partners and just went bar hopping tonight and just bet 20-year-old ASU people about push-ups. Knut, you in on that? We make some
I can
money.
only do 4.
Oh, side hustle. No, well, obviously we're not challenging you. You're a mole in this thing, but we just go challenge in shape ASU people with old Joe here.
It's a good idea.
It's not a bad play.
We'd make killing.
Yeah, just get up a DraftKings betting thing. So the 100 miles is for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I agree. People ask me why I do these. When I go biking, I only like going up.
I know.
I don't like going 90 miles. I like going as hard as, what's the pace at what degree of ride, the slope, and how far. Forgetting the elements for a minute. That's the only joy I get from riding. Part of that joy is also the opposite of that. People are like, people love skiing. I get why they love skiing. It's fun to go down. I got bored of skiing because, first of all, I don't like to chairlift, but I also don't want to hike. You know, I get the same thrill going down a bike that I climb that hill, or even if it's a different way down, than I do from skiing. So biking solves all those things for me. Like you go 100 miles, I prefer to go up when I bike. And so I found this group of people that likes the same thing as me. And not that I won't go days where I can go sideways, but that's just, I don't know, filler.
Yeah.
for the times that we go up. So yeah, I think you have to do it for yourself. It's kind of like my blog. Maybe one of the tricks I could hack myself is at the end of each post when no one cares, so I don't bore them before they get through it, is just jot down, my meals to kind of get accountable. I have to create some kind of accountability.
Yeah, the tracking is a good way to do that. The people that you are in a community with is always a good way to do that. We know
the mirror is a good way as well.
The mirror, I think that the mirror, just in a broader sense, like when you look in the mirror, do you like what you see?
Yeah.
The person,
yeah.
And the physical form. And I think that that's a really good sort of question. And if you don't, then there's no one to blame. I mean, this is about us. Like, why don't we learn to love ourselves?
Yeah.
And if we do that, we show up better.
Because it's so funny. I never looked in the mirror. And then in my 50s, everything's like awful. But I don't mind selfies now that I'm older because I don't care what I look like. It's almost funny. I feel good. And so I don't mind looking in the mirror.
That's right.
But it is hard looking in the mirror and seeing the shrinkage and the flakage and all the other stuff. I don't know. Do you have a problem with that, Knut?
Not really.
Oh. And what about you?
No, I've worked hard on this system, so I'm pretty happy with the way I look.
Yeah.
But I think that, the funny part is, like, if you're 20, you're going to be 60 at some point. So we should all just give each other a little bit of room here. There's nothing good or bad about any of those. They're all good.
Yeah.
And I think we've created a society that sort of, tips a little bit more towards this sort of early stage, somewhat empty moment in our lives when later on we probably, Howard, I know you do this, I do the same thing. What our purpose is today is to give back, right? That's what we're here to do.
I'm finally at that phase.
Yep.
All right. What a pleasure. Good luck on where is this 100-mile race?
In Wyoming.
And what's the hardest race you've ever done?
205-mile run around Lake Tahoe.
Well, that was a year. I'm just talking about in a short period of time. So how long did 200 miles take?
3.5 days. But, if your listeners want to remember anything, Howard, in 2017, I ran a marathon on 6 continents in 6 days.
And then keep going.
I've done expedition races upwards of 70 hours.
Does it help if someone chased? Like
I was
axe murderer and like Jason? Would
do you go
that
faster
help?
being chased or chasing?
Help.
I think that's one of the questions that you should ask people. Do you go faster being chased or being the chaser?
It's a great question. And then what's your one quick trick for recovery of these things?
Well, I think sleep is the best recovery tool that you could possibly have.
Are you a good sleeper?
Yeah. Not long, but very good at sleeping. I'm now up to 6 hours.
But so you don't have to go 9 hours.
No, 6 good hours are good now.
Okay, I like hearing that. All right, well, we're going to let you go.
Thanks, Howard.
The website is 1up.health.
Yep.
Got it. All right, you were listening to Panic with Friends, Knut and I, well, mostly me, sit down with friends that are founders, CEOs, entrepreneurs, traders, venture capitalists, people that just like pushing and staying a little bit ahead of the curve. You don't have to be like Joe and do 200 miles and always be sniffing the wind, but it's pretty damn good if you can. So you can search my name on Apple, Spotify, Google, or Panic with Friends. Please do subscribe, and you won't have to do anything else. You'll get a pod like this every week. All right, everybody. Goodbye. See you soon.
Howard Lindzon is the founder and general partner at Social Leverage. All opinions expressed by Howard and podcast guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinion of Social Leverage or StockTwits. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon for decisions. Guests may maintain positions in securities discussed in this podcast.